I'll count to 3, and then we'll start. 1, 2, 3. Amin Maalouf, welcome to our Paris studio. You're the writer of an impressive series of historical novels, essays, writing about East and West, about identity, long before everyone else started doing that. And everyone else started doing that, of course, after 9/11. You are a mosaic. You are Christian, you are Arab, you are Lebanese, you are French, you are a man, you are almost middle age.
Well, each one of us, for me it's obvious because I came from a country, from a certain sphere, cultural sphere, which is the Arab culture, and I came to live in Europe, in France, and I adopted a different language. So it's obvious that I have two cultures. But I think each one of us has many elements in his or her identity. Each one of us in Europe, for example, has to feel what it is to be French and European, at least for that, or Dutch and European. And it's not always clear. Each one of us needs to examine one's identity, like one examines one's conscience, to make it work in a way that makes your identity and your personality a factor of peace instead of being a factor of hate or a factor of war.
Yeah. Because you wrote already in 1996, Identité meurtrière. What did you mean by that?
What I meant is that we need a new attitude towards identity. We need to give people who have mixed identities a legitimacy, because we are in a world where people are always pushed towards choosing between where they belong. And I think we need to give people, for example, immigrants, the possibility to say, yes, I truly belong to the country where I live, and I can also belong to my country of origin.
Not to present it as a choice that you're either Western or Muslim.
And when one forces people to choose, then we generate what I call murderous identities. Because when people have to choose, they choose their culture of origin against their culture, the culture of the country where they live, and they become the enemies of the country where they live, or they choose the country where they live, and they feel guilt towards the culture of origin. And we don't need to have that.
That's good, because actually it seems to be moving in the opposite direction. In my own country now, there's a new political party called Proud of Being Dutch. And it stresses Dutch identity, and it would be the second biggest party in parliament if elections were held right now. Why do you think that actually we're moving in the opposite direction, reducing people to one identity rather than allowing for more?
I think it's a global problem. I think mankind had reached a point where it needs to organize itself in a different way. We cannot survive with the old way of looking to identities. We need to reassure people about their identity, that it's not going to disappear, that they don't have neither to leave it aside nor to let it die. They can make it live, and at the same time make it live alongside other cultures.
Well, when was the moment that you realized identity, that is going to be a very important theme in my work?
It's difficult for me to say there is one moment, because I was born in Lebanon. And in Lebanon, one has to ask oneself every second about one's identity, who I am. Do I belong to this country or only to my community? And this is an element that is always with me. And then I discovered something. I would be able to tell you exactly at what point I began to feel that this community politics, which I hated in Lebanon, is no more a Lebanese or a Levantine problem. It's becoming a world problem.
With migration.
not only with migration, with all what happened in areas like the former Yugoslavia and elsewhere. I think you spoke about a mosaic. Many people used to say Lebanon is a mosaic of communities. How would anybody make this mosaic work? And I must say that the whole world today is a mosaic of communities.
Yeah.
And we need to make it work. It's not whether we are going to live together. It's only a matter of how are we going to live together, because nobody is a stranger today. We are all neighbors, whether we live next door or on another continent. We are all neighbors today.
So why is it that this just doesn't happen?
Because we have centuries of differentiation. For centuries we have lived.
And so we carry that.
We carry a ancestral habit of determining our identity in a different way. Europe is now moving towards a different way of looking to the identities. For centuries, the Europeans were fighting against each other. And now, for the last 50 or 60 years,
we start fighting others.
At least they are beginning to put those fights behind them. When one goes through the border between France and Germany, and one remembers that there were so many millions of people who died for this border.
Isn't that amazing? Indeed, if you would have gone...
I find it marvelous, because I come from the Middle East. I would like the whole Middle East to become like that, to go from one country to another without even remembering that there was something called Alsace-Lorraine problem, and Alsace becomes only a beautiful area where one goes and enjoys life and food and everything. So what happened in Europe in the last 50 or 60 years, it's a process that needed people to become conscious and to act. Yeah. It's not something that happened just by letting time do its work. There were people who said, well, we must look to our relationship in a different way. We must build Europe. It's not only something that came through a historical process. We need something similar for the whole world, for the Middle East and for the whole world.
So indeed, that from after World War II, German identity, French identity was no longer defined in opposition to the other. And within 60 years, it becomes absolutely impossible to think of Germans hating French and French hating Germans.
That's marvelous, and it's unique. Yeah, it's unique in world history. Never in world history did we have this kind of experience.
So we can do it.
Yes, we can do it, of course. We can do it, but we're not doing it. We cannot afford, in a world that has reached this level of technological development and economic development, to have this type of relationship between nations, between countries. We need a different way to look of looking to identities.
Indeed, like as you wrote, technology evolved, but now our morality needs to evolve too, because otherwise technology will kill us.
Our moral evolution did not follow our technological and scientific evolution. It evolved, but much slower. Yeah. And my feeling is that when in a world which is so advanced in other fields, we are not able to deal with problems like those, that we are not able to let the minorities live in peace and security, or at least survive. This means that something is wrong, and it's certainly one of the elements that makes me feel that we're not going in the good direction.
So indeed, you would want to take Europeans by the hand and say, look, this is what happened in Lebanon when you started stressing and reducing people to just one identity. Is that it?
I won't take the example of Lebanon especially, but there are plenty of examples. I think the whole world is divided today in ethnic groups, religious groups who are fighting each other. The problem of identities is important, at least because of the fact that we are in a global and globalizing world where we need to know where we are. Where we are in this world, what is our raison d'être, where is our culture vis-à-vis this world culture which is emerging, where is our place in this world?
The Greek figure Cassandra was condemned to foresee catastrophes, but being unable to prevent them. What is it like to be a Cassandra?
Well, a writer is usually a Cassandra.
But how do you deal with the frustration that you see things this way, but they're so obviously developing in the opposite direction?
Well, I resent it very much, but I'm a realistic person.
You wake up in the middle of the night and you hit
so
the pillow.
I say, well, I'm just a writer. I write, I speak, but I can't change the world. All what I can do is to say, well, we're going in the wrong direction. But if you're on a boat and you can go and try to wake up the captain and say, well, we're not going in the wrong direction, but sometimes you can't. Yeah. But one has to try. Yeah. And I must say that in Europe, I feel that when somebody speaks, there are people who listen and people who say, well, what should we do? I remain hopeful, although I feel that the answers are not on the same level as the threats.
The threats, yeah. Hope dies last. Is a Dutch saying.
Oh, yes, I share it. I think one should never lose hope.
Inshallah, there'll be many years to come. And how would you hope that, say, in 50 years, historians will talk about Amin Maalouf? They'll say, and then?
Well, it would be very reconforting if they even remember the name.
So they'll say he was very modest, but then what will they say?
No, what I hope is that I'll be wrong, because things might be very gloomy in 50 years. So I hope if this interview is seen by somebody in 50 years, I hope the people will say, "Oh, how wrong he was."
He was such a pessimist.
Yes,
he didn't get it at all.
Yeah. That's really what I hope.
So this is what the world has come to: is that an intellectual analyzes a situation, brings his best analytical gifts to bear,
and hope for the best,
and then hopes that he's wrong.
Yes, yes. I think that now I wouldn't have said the same a few years ago. But today, the evolution of the world in the last few years leads me to say that, because if all this conflict between quote-unquote civilizations continues to go on, and then it subsides in a miraculous way, well, that's fine. But I don't think we're going in that direction. We need to reinvent the world. And I think the main task of literature today is to reinvent the world, because the world needs to be reinvented.
Thank you very much.